Alrighty. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, everyone. I am Abed de la Cruz, the information security guy for 30 years, storyteller by accident, and your host for MARTESclass, where we take big topics and make them human, practical, and sometimes maybe a little bit chaotic. So tonight we will be talking about a very big topic. There isn't any event or discussion that this technology isn't a part of. It's called artificial intelligence. But specifically, tonight we will talk about AI security because apparently the robots aren't just coming for our jobs, they're also coming for our data, for our privacy, and might be also for that one co-worker who still uses password 123. We are very thankful for you guys that are all here. We know it's 8 p.m. and you're probably in your last stretch of energy. I've talked to our guests, and also this is the last boost of energy that they will give for tonight. So really appreciate their presence. And without further ado, let's do this. Okay, so let's start off. I'm going to do the intro, and I'm going to channel my inner Michael Buffer or Road Dog for this. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, MARTESclass, the only Tuesday show where information technology and security meets honesty, objectivity, and somehow nobody gets fired for it yet, proudly brings to you hailing from our proud country, the Philippines, a Chief Information Security Officer, a Chief AI Officer, and gamer for life. Let's bring in Mr. Anton Bonifacio. Anton, good evening.
Hey, good evening,
Thanks for having
everyone.
the show.
Good evening, Abed. Happy to be here.
Salamat po. Salamat sa pagpapaunlak. I know you're a very busy guy, but I promise it's going to be an interesting discussion, and we'll hit all the right buttons tonight, I hope.
Well,
And then, of course, and I don't know if you can understand the reference I gave, but anyways, I'm sure this next guy will. He's a pioneer and practitioner long before there was the term cybersecurity. He is the AI ambassador for Singapore. And of course, having said that, Anthony Lim. Anthony, welcome.
Kamusta kayo? Hey, thanks, Abed. Hello, Anton. Happy to be on the show. Thank you.
So actually, Anthony is the reason why I delve into information security, or why I'm in information security. So without necessarily dating ourselves,
Here's an H a day.
I went to Singapore to talk to this Asia Pacific big shot director of this firewall company. Said, "Hey, Mr. Anthony Lim, I don't have anything, but I promise you, I'll make that firewall, the firewall in the Philippines. Just give me 1 year." And lo and behold, it happened. So it was too bad we made somebody rich for it, but still, it's an achievement. So thank you, Anthony, for gracing the show.
No. Thank you for having us on the show.
Right. Anton, I have one question for you in the spills we have in the boards and the postings that I made. You said triple hatting till your neck breaks, but I only counted 2 titles there. CISO and Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer. Are we missing something?
Yes, so functionally, I'm also Chief Data Officer for Globe, right? So I've been holding the 3 roles. Of course, longer assistant for Globe than 2 years ago, officially Chief AI Officer. So that kind of like covers AI strategy, policy, governance, but also engineering, implementations, platform enablement. So very little to do actually with the CISO role. There's a little bit of course, some synergy and overlaps. And of course, kind of like that third element now, just very recently, is that you can't really, although like cyber is clearly a scaling driver for AI, kind of like the other pillar and leg of that is clearly data. So kind of like now all of those things, I would say under that particular umbrella, or these key pillars that would really help, I guess, us in Globe, achieve our AI ambition, are kind of like all within that, I would say, synchronicity that now I'm helping lead.
Actually, I want to jump in here if you don't mind a bit.
Yeah, of
Anton,
course.
you say you're Chief Data Officer, so maybe you're not telling us this. Are you also DPO?
The DPO does report to me.
Okay, all right. That's not so bad. Yeah, at least all right. So that's not so bad.
So that's all included. Is that so? Like the cybersecurity tower, the digital policy or data privacy, and then there's the data office, and then there's the AI group. So kind of like all of these 4 different key functions, all sort of like roll up into that the overall tower that I lead.
Well, one more thing, I like your guitar. I play the classical guitar too, so I couldn't help noticing it.
Oh yeah, Anthony plays the guitar. But I have a more important question for Anton. Anton, do you get paid triple?
I was in another podcast a few weeks back, the Kaido podcast, and Sanjay asked the same question. So not exactly, no. I think you all know in the corporate world is like, look, hey, you know what? As you get added work, it's not like you get double, triple, quadruple the pay. But hey, at the end of the day, it's not about pay. It's about like
That's true.
The impact that we can drive.
That is very much true. Very much true. All right. So moving on, we are going directly to the heart of the discussion. The heart of the discussion today, the topic, and we have a segment. It's called Team Talk. So this is where we discuss the topic for today, and of course, the topic, as you well know, is the AI security lowdown. So it's all the details about AI security. There's a lot of talk about AI security, but we want the audience to know exactly what AI security is, how it's implemented, where does it apply to, and all that other details that I'm sure they're all waiting to find out. So the reason we're all here, of course, that's the reason we unpack all of that. We'll attempt to reveal or discover those details, nitty-gritty, under the hood stuff about AI security. And of course, first thing first, AI is everywhere in our tools, our workflows, our decisions, and in some cases, in our nightmares. But behind the hype, practitioners are dealing with real stuff: shadow AI, hallucinations, governance gaps, and the one manager who keeps saying, "Can't we just automate that?" So those are the top of mind we have when we're dealing with this AI security. So the first question is that we want to answer what we put up in the posters, definitely. And one of the question there, one of the biggest questions there, is that what do leaders need to know before AI breaks their business, right? So that is the first question. And because this is MARTESclass, not the 200-page white paper, we're doing it talk show style. So we're going to do the top 5 things you need to know before AI breaks your business, and then I will get your inputs from it. So let's start with number 5. Number 5 is AI is already inside your company, even if you did not approve it. Shadow AI is everywhere. Employees are building co-pilots, agents, workflows without security, without governance, and definitely sometimes without telling IT. So if you don't know where AI is being used, you cannot secure it. That's just a fact. So that's number 5. So to my panelists this evening, what's the real world consequence when companies adopt AI faster than they adopt cyber? I'm going to start off with you, Anton.
Well, I think one just key point, right, is like, look, I mean, I think, we like to think about like, AI security as if it's a new thing. But I think like what you were saying, Abid, right, is like, look, shadow AI, it's just shadow IT. I mean, it's all kind of like the same banana. I would say in a lot of ways. I think the whole shadow AI thing is more like potentially a Gartner term in that sense. But like one of the things we've always said, and I think there's a big reason that I sort of kind of like it help being responsible, I think, for both roles, is that like, look, I don't think you can do any of these things without some of these critical foundations, right? And like I mentioned earlier, cybersecurity is certainly a key pillar. before you can even drive AI at scale, right? So 100%. I think as long as you have some of these basics right, like I said, it doesn't have to be anything that is AI security specific. But I think if you have the right hygiene as far as cybersecurity is concerned, I would argue that 80% of your existing controls should be able to cover it. So I think that confidence level, I think whether it's from a leadership perspective or at least within the company, if the ability to be able to be confident and trust that, hey, your security controls are actually intact. I think to your point, being able to actually drive wider adoption is going to be a challenge, right? So I think that's just like, maybe just that lay of the land. So yes, it is going to be very, very critical, because I don't think you can really drive further adoption, especially deeper value that really CEOs and businesses are looking for, if you don't have any of these foundations correct.
Right. You mentioned the word drive twice, and that a thought came into my head. It's like, what makes cars drive faster, right? And it's brakes, right? Because we wouldn't even dare to go past the speed limit or drive fast if we don't have brakes. So definitely a very excellent point, Anton. Thank you very much. Tony, your turn, man.
Okay, well, I totally agree with Anton in the sense that, first of all, when you talk about AI security, it's not this esoteric and it's not some fanciful new stuff. A few weeks ago at another seminar, somebody asked me about AI cybersecurity, and I thought about it for a moment and say, look, basically for most of us, what's AI? It's a software in a server or in a service. So what is our basic security? You need the firewall, you need the authentication, you need the network segmentation, you need the application security, because what happens? Hackers will try and get the system and abuse your AI. So you got to get the basics right first, and then, which is what Anton said. And the thing is, a lot of the people forget. They think that AI security or AI cybersecurity is this new esoteric thing. No, if you Google, okay, here's the other thing. If you Google AI security or AI cybersecurity, don't even talk about ChatGPT. You get 200 things, and most of it are basically motherhood statements. I mean, who doesn't know this? But how do you realize that? How do you implement that? How do you have a structure? And bottom line is that the management really has to want it. It's like, they'll hang or go to jail if something breaks and their data leaks, and it's too late. We've got jokes like, so basically what's happening is that in a lot of the cases that we in Asia, very few of us actually build our own AI systems. Very few do our own LLMs or even SLMs. We just use an existing AI system. So there's not a lot to talk about ethics and bias and privacy in the all the AI governance stuff. Half of it actually is just it doesn't apply. What applies is the user side, the responsible AI, the governance on the user side. Do you curate your input? Do you curate your output? Do you have shadow AI and carelessly do it? Oh, you're not allowed to do this in the office, so I'll do it on my own phone, on my own home computer. I put you take company data, put the ChatGPT at home to ask it to curate the data for you, and things like that. You see, so again, it comes back to awareness. We took a whole generation to have awareness training to get people to be more focused on being aware about spam and phishing. So something like that, we need to have that awareness. And companies today, I think the management is quite not aware yet. Some of them are very strict. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. But if you just do that, people will find other ways to do it. So a lot of it has to do, in a sense, based on what Anton said, to do with the cyber hygiene and culture in the organization with respect to cybersecurity per se. AI is just one other tool, one other piece of the IT puzzle, the application. In fact, earlier on, I bet you, in the opening, you quip about, can we automate this? You can look at AI as trying to automate automation, if you like. Okay, back to you.
Very good point. Very good point. Well, so essentially, and this is what I was also thinking a lot of times whenever AI security gets to be talked about, is that, hey, the same security principles applies anyway, right?
Yes, it hasn't changed.
Yeah. So that maybe, I don't know, the hype of it all, or maybe people are just scared because they realize how powerful AI is. So that's why probably these misconceptions happens in their brain. So we move to number 4. Number 4 is AI turns every employee into a developer, and that changes everything. So when non-technical teams start building automations, prompts, agents, so you're not just scaling productivity, you're scaling risk. Suddenly, the biggest vulnerability isn't the model, but it's the person using it. How do you secure an environment where everyone is now a developer? I'll turn the tables and start with you, Tony.
Okay, everyone becomes a developer, most of whom the day before wasn't a developer.
True.
So now you have vibe code, low code, no code. They write small routines to help them their thing. And again, the only way is by policy. No, you cannot do this, we'll shut it down. I mean, until we find a better way. But before you can have a policy and shut it down, the management themselves have to realize that this is thing. I mean, the management can't tell low code from vibe code from no code. How do they know what to enforce?
Great. So that's why we have two guests here. One is very expert on governance and policies, and of course, one is an expert on actually implementing them and executing the controls. Anton, what are the controls you think should be, put into place for this?
Maybe just approach it from a like I said, right, since my responsibility is not necessarily just controlling it, but a big bulk of the work that we do, for example, is actually enabling it. So in Globe, for example, as a background and heads up, is that our AI transformation strategy, a big part of it is actually hinged around enabling it through democratization and a strong bottom-up approach. Citizen development, for example, was really a key, I would say, pillar as far as to be able to till the soil, ensure that the foundations are in place for us to be able to drive stronger, top-down intent, I think, from a value realization perspective. So in a lot of ways, I think to answer your question is like, look, for us, democratization was a key driver that we had to support also from a security perspective, right? I mean, I think in a lot of ways, the example, for example, that I give people within Globe is like when ChatGPT moment happened, a lot of companies, and rightfully so, because there's a lot of regulated entities in the Philippines. I mean, the first reaction was, hey, you know what, you got to block ChatGPT. We can't access that. For us, it was actually completely different. To us, it's like, hey, you know what, let people get access to it. My argument there actually is like, look, I don't think we need to be too caught up. Like, look, I mean, at the end of the day, everything is about risk management. As far as I'm concerned, it's all sort of kind of like relates to the first question is like, I don't think we can obsess about and get too worried and lose sleep over like, oh my God, you know what? Somebody's going to upload a confidential document to ChatGPT. But if you're not doing the basics and, because like, what's the bigger risk? Somebody uploading a confidential document in Dropbox or somebody putting that, for example, through an LLM somewhere? I would argue Dropbox. Because like, look, I mean, the way that these things work anyway, if I upload, let's say, my birth certificate over to ChatGPT, it's not like all of a sudden overnight you can query it Abbott and say, hey, you know what, where was Anton born? Like that's not exactly how the training and the learning works, right? If I had uploaded my birth certificate, for example, openly in some Dropbox link and everybody can access, that's immediate exposure. But point being is, again, citizen development is a big part of our enablement strategy. I wouldn't necessarily say that that's a negative thing that you have to suppress. But bottom line is your security strategy should be aligned with what your what your AI adoption strategy is, and just make sure that those things are kind of like lockstep.
Right. But
I'll add to
they
that.
do have to have some controls, right, Tony? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll add to that. So basically, again, yes, you're right. But again, the management has to know what is the AI strategy, what is the AI roadmap, and they'll know what to control, what to allow. So in many organizations, what they do is, yes, they block ChatGPT and they have a corporate version or a corporate version of a Copilot, and then so you could allow the guys to play around with it and be not afraid that they'll write something to wreck the system or upload a confidential document, because the corporate version is supposed to have certain guardrails and restrictions to. It's like sandboxing the whole thing. So you get the best of both worlds in that sense.
Yep. Well,
Right.
but like I said, right, I think it's dependent on, to your point, right? Like, look, what the strategy is, how you guys are implementing it. But I guess maybe to answer directly your question, Abbott, right? It's like, look, so what are controls that you got to be able to put in place? Like I said, I don't think a lot of these things really need to be reinvented from the wheel, in a sense. Like, look, hey, you know what? If you say your policy is you want to block ChatGPT and you only want access to, let's say, your corporate LLM or whatever it is. I mean, that's not like, and Tony said it earlier, right? Like, it's not esoteric. That's not rocket science. I mean, you use the same technologies to be able to do that degree of control, right? Like I said, it all boils down to what the policy is. It all boils down to how aligned is that with what your AI adoption strategy is, or what the overall top-down buy-in is. And I think you just got to be able to implement it there. That said, there are some practical considerations, and maybe that's what I can put on the table, because you asked that earlier, Abit, right? Is where some of the nuances are now. And this is really more because things are going very rapidly. And as you all know, right, that's as far as the technology is concerned. It's not even just anymore about kind of like SaaS level type of protection that, hey, you know what? Oh, block access to, ChatGPT.com or Google or Gemini or whatever it is. I think a big part of the challenge now from a governance perspective, from a control perspective, are kind of like these endpoint desktop-based type of agentic solutions, right? When you start talking about OpenClaw, you start talking about Hermes, you start talking about, to some degree, Claude for co-work. There's actually very little tools and technologies that are somewhat available out there right now to be able to do that degree of control. Because now a lot of these things are now localized, and it's hard to be able to differentiate, right? But that said, counter to that, again, it still boils down to what the policy is. I think to be able to really control and block some of these things, you still should be able to use your EDR, detect, for example, what executables are running. Hey, you know what? If it's, you see OpenClaw as an executable, you see Hermes as an executable, you got to be able to block it. But if you do allow, for example, let's say a Claude for co-work, there are going to be some visibility and governance challenges there. So I think that's where kind of like, maybe there are still some gaps as far as able to be doing governance. I think just my last bit is that's, for example, a lot of where I'm also grappling, right? It's like, look, the speed that we're trying to drive adoption and enablement, I would say arguably a year ago, that delta was much smaller. Like our ability to be able to govern and control the technology was much easier. But now the technology is just moving way too fast. And even the tech to be able to control things are just falling behind. And this is even at the backdrop of like a lot of security companies doing massive acquisitions, for example, of all of these new AI security startups. Just how fast things are moving, the technology is just way behind. And that, I think, is part of the worry.
Which is what Abed's question was alluding to, the fact that the AI adoption informally is moving faster than the management strategy or policy, and in fact, okay, so you could have some EDR to control then things like methods and all that come in. It's more a knowledge thing rather than a technology thing, which is a different kettle of fish.
Right. I mean, like a year ago from another organization, is that basically they were talking about, one, of course, to get a corporate account because you have, enterprise data isolation, right? Primarily.
Right.
Second is DLP. So they had some DLP where you can capture what you put into the prompt. So there were that was fundamental controls we were latching on to that period. So, like what you said, and like what Anton said, essentially it's still the same controls that you need to implement.
Yeah. Don't get sidetracked by this whole, enamored by this whole AI thing. The controls, the IT software and network controls are still the same, because end of the day, AI is another piece of the IT.
Yeah, but Anthony, remember when we were first starting out in information security, not yet called cybersecurity, information security was sexy, right? Everybody was talking about it. Everybody was afraid about it. So I guess it's just a cycle every now and then. So, but okay. So let's go to number 3. Still have 3 more to go. AI innovation is moving faster than your controls, and something will definitely break. So it's like what you said, Tony, AI is evolving faster than the policies, your SOC, your governance, and even the people. The first thing that breaks is usually the thing you assume was safe. Anton, what's the first control that breaks? Do you think when AI moves too fast?
I mean, if we're going to get specific, I would answer that in two ways. So one, I did sort of mention it, right? Like I said, from a practical, at the moment, real world perspective, again, right? The endpoint desktop based type of agentic enablement, like I said, right? Very specifically, say Claude for co-work, which is kind of like that Claude-like environment. If you do sanction and allow, let's say Claude for co-work, which, for example, for us we do. The ability to govern and control that at the moment is much more difficult, as opposed to, let's say, us being able to apply the same DSPM, DLP attributed to it, let's say, for example, for SaaS-based type of AI, right? So there is a disparity there. Just the second answer to that is more of kind of like, I guess, alluding to it, is that kind of like what breaks first. I think it's just more of, look at it in the sense that I think, and Tony mentioned it, right? Let's say Mythos. And the advent now of these powerful cyber-based LLMs that does a lot of immediate discovery and whatnot. I think it's just more, if your security teams are too busy trying to control and govern AI, that they're also not leveraging on AI themselves, and they're also not enabling themselves, then I think they're going to fall behind. And that is what I think will break. I think security teams right now, as they're also governing, they need to be learning it. They need to be studying it. If the SOC, for example, or compliance teams are not already, let's say, DevSecOps teams, they're not building harnesses already that also utilizes LLMs. If they're not using LLMs in their CI/CD pipelines to be able to do some degree of code scanning, and they're still relying on off-the-shelf products, relying on vendors to sell them the next shiny thing, then I think that is what breaks first. Because you know what? You can't sort of kind of like just fight water with fire in that sense. You got to fight fire with fire. And you know what? Security teams and defenders need to also learn this technology very, very quickly and adopt it into their daily workflows to be able to take advantage.
Understood.
I think
Understood.
that's the whole kettle of fish, in the sense that we are assuming that in the SOC and a lot of vendors' products, whether it's a Trend, Palo Alto, you name it, there's some element
All of the vendors
AI.
will say, "Yes, I have AI."
Yes, anything with AI, the stock price will go up, even if you don't have AI. But the point is that we're assuming that those fellas in the stock will be using AI to automate the responses, automate the detection, just like automate the threat hunting and threat modeling, just like the bad guys are doing it. I mean, in fact, it's quite interesting. There was a government lecture I was addressing a group of government people. I say, look, the bad guys are VAPTing you. They're scanning your network every day. Are you scanning your own network to see what they are scanning? So the same thing, you see, I mean, the SOC needs to automate their threat detection internally or externally. Don't just think about the dark web and all that. So, are they doing this, first of all? And that's a step forward. I mean, in the very least, AI automates some of these SOC functions to get the SOC guys more up to speed. And then they go worry about the Claude for co-work.
Thank you, Anthony. So let's move to number 2. AI illiterate. Guys, I know some of the questions are going to get some overlap, but you'll have to excuse me because that's the top 5. I can't do anything about the top 5. So we'll just answer it as we go.
Top 5, is it?
It's not there actually.
No.
So number 2 is AI illiteracy is now a business risk and a national security risk. So most people using AI today don't understand how it works, what it keeps, what it exposes. And it's not just a trading gap, but that's actually a real business risk. And at scale, it becomes a national security risk as well, right? So I'm going to start off with Anthony. Is AI illiteracy now a national security risk?
Okay. You brought an interesting point here, and I know that basically Anton is grappling with that in his everyday work about AI democracy. The problem with this concept of what you just talked about, AI illiteracy, is that a lot of people do not think they are illiterate. I mean, there are even classes like, you're going to attend a class to do how to do prompt engineering, how to make the most of ChatGPT and all that. And
Anthony, a lot of people now think they're smart because they use AI.
Yes. So the illiteracy part comes in more in the ignorance part rather than technical literacy. Illiteracy, maybe they think they're okay, but it's meaningless. So what if I know any of this? I'm still not taking care of my curating my input and output and being responsible. Again, it comes into it's a whole game of responsible AI, not just a governance AI part, and not just a guardrails or stopping this or preventing that. So, in a way, it becomes a national risk, in the sense that I don't think it's reached that level yet. Okay, so I think we can be a bit. Not that we want to rest on our laurels, but maybe a corporate risk. It hasn't reached citizen level risk yet. Anton, tell me if I'm wrong.
Okay. Skynet has not been self-aware yet. So, okay.
No.
Anton, yes.
No, if I understand the framing correctly, then like I think what Tony's leading into, I would say two things. Maybe let's start first with a national risk. I wouldn't say it's a national security risk, but national risk just in the sense that I do think that the potential economic impacts of how it really drives, for example, especially in the Philippines, I think we're immensely vulnerable, right? I mean, I know, for example, that within government, it's something that we're really looking into, whether that's disruption to the BPO industry, how it, for example, impacts a lot of the jobs that we have potentially, and how ready we are for that. I do think there's a silver lining. I mean, there have been plenty of analyses, I would say, online on what jobs might stay. So whether that's, for example, for us, we still do have a lot of practical jobs in the Philippines, whether that's plumbing, nurses, so on and so forth. I think those are going to be a little bit more resilient. So I think
Podcast hosts.
Perhaps, no, not really. I think that's easily disrupted by a model. Yeah, but so I think the national risk from that sense, the economic risk, certainly is valid, and I think that's going to be, using Tony's words, a whole kettle of fish. On the flip side, on the corporate risk, I actually love Tony's line that it isn't so much so about just literacy in terms of familiarity with the technology, but I do think that the corporate risk, even for us on how we're trying to manage it, is precisely on the use. And not just beyond from a responsible AI perspective, but what sort of like keeps me up now as we drive enablement is really like the subject of AI slop, right? It's like, look, how do you really now also drive governance to be able to ensure that the output, as people are starting to use AI more, that how do you still keep some degree of KPIs? Like my struggle is like, look, I don't think we certainly can't do some AI use shaming. Because we're not going to be able to drive adoption. I don't think leaders should be shaming, for example, their team, say, hey, you know what? Oh, you used AI for this. You know what? You're going to get a performance intervention. I think that's wrong. But at the same time, we still have to be able to figure out how do we govern slop output, right? That, we got to be able to use AI to drive critical thinking, not lazy outputs, right? And I think that's a more difficult balance to be able to figure out. And I don't think there's necessarily a silver bullet to that. But I do think that is now the more practical level of risk, I think, from that sense, as far as, going into the illiteracy. Is illiteracy not so much in how to use, not so much of familiarity, exactly. Not so much of the technical illiteracy, but really more of like, look, the responsibility or the wisdom to be able to use it. So.
No, in fact, I totally agree with you, and there's a soft piece close to my heart. I mean, yes, because a few things are happening here with respect to this. I call it responsible AI, the AI slop, and not only AI slop, which is the output, but the slop that comes after the AI slop as in irresponsible deployment. I'll give a few examples, and you've seen this. So you don't need to shame because it'll come out by itself. I'll give a few examples. There was a Pakistani newspaper, print newspaper, and the last paragraph said, would you like me to blah, blah, blah?
That's a common mistake, yes.
So, okay, it's not wrong for the journalist to use ChatGPT to QA his document, but apparently he forgot to not copy the last paragraph. His boss, the editor, seemed to have passed it. Then there was another one where our top university in Singapore, an academic research paper had a prompt in it. I mean, so the AI slop input, output, and the slop usage. And then, we have these jokes about you make a whole report using AI, nice, lovely report. You don't bother to look at it. You show your boss, he sees a nice report. He doesn't bother. He shows it to his boss. The information goes to the client or the regulator or the media or go public, and tomorrow your stock price drops.
Yeah.
So
we need a stronger word for AI slop that already came from an AI slop. Maybe we should call it AI sludge or something.
So slop. The other thing is this.
It's not sludge.
No. I used to do a lot. I used to be in Korea a lot to do business, and a lot of young people, university people, were learning English. Today, there was a report that actually had a drop in the number of people in Korea bothering to learn English,
the
right?
thing.
Because ChatGPT is doing the speaking for them. So that is the problem today. So literacy is now, AI literacy or lack of is now affecting a different kind of literacy. People can just throw things in the machine and out it comes. And let me share one more thing with you. So I was auditing a China company for ISO 27000. And they didn't have this policy, they didn't have that policy. In front of me, they got ChatGPT to spit it out. Now I have the policy. I mean, could you believe this?
I think it's what it's becoming to is that I guess it's now more of laziness than anything else, right? I mean, like,
Yes.
you have it churn out whatever you want. You don't bother to check it because you're
And then you
also
need the
confident it's
compliance
going to
because
be.
the regulator doesn't bother to check it either.
True.
And then something else breaks.
Well, we better get to number one, or else we'll be talking about it all night. Number one, misuse. I think we've touched this a lot already. Not malice is the fastest way AI breaks a business. AI doesn't need to be hacked or to cause damage. A single bad prompt, a wrong automation, or a hallucinated output can break a workflow, leak data, or mislead a decision. So from everything that you've seen around, guys, in your experience, what's the most dangerous misuse of AI that you've seen? Anton, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll lean in. I think starting to somewhat overtrust some of its output sometimes. Like I said, right? I think it sort of goes back to that, audit and critical thinking type of mindset. Is that like, look, the tool is very powerful, right? I mean, like, look, a lot of us have used it on a daily basis. It does great things. There's a lot of insights. But for example, again, I use the technology on a regular basis, whether that's vibe coding apps or, again, really using it to crunch out things. It's like, people talk about Agi, but holy moly, like, the thing's pretty stupid. Like, if you don't really put in the right effort, for example, to be able to massage the output right, if you don't get it to ask the right questions, or for example, but partly it's almost kind of like biased product play, but that's why I love Claude, for example. I think the harnesses in how they have designed it is that when you ask something, you ask it to do something, at least they've designed it so that it asks you question first before it assumes. Some of the other models sort of kind of like just churn something out with so much confidence. And if you don't really, either A, you don't know the subject matter well, or B, again, you're not, you don't drive that critical thinking. You almost take it hook, line, and sinker. And I think in a lot of ways, you address it, let's say in a corporate setting, sometimes it's high stakes, there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of work, and you start to leverage on this thing. If you don't really do also your self-audit and quality on the output that it arrives and things that it tells you, we tend to trust it sometimes too much. And I think there's going to be some challenges there as far as that particular misuse, because in a lot of ways, sometimes what it turns out, and even if it's so confident, is actually not exactly correct.
Right.
Yeah, so
right.
even if it's correct, it's not what you want. It's not relevant. Even if it's correct, it's not what you want. So and then you give it to your boss who's confident, and he gives it to his boss or to the media or to the regulator or to the public or to the client, and then something else happens.
But Tony and Anton, also not just that, but whenever you ask it to do something for you, and then you ask it, oh, is this good? You're almost certainly going to get a compliment, right? So it's like, you did good. Your observation was
idea,
really spot on. So,
Spurs you on,
that adds to the confidence level, which is sadly also is the inverse of checking the work that's being churned out, right? So that's
why Tony's point earlier was important, right? Again, like what we're talking about now isn't so much so technical misuse. It's not technical illiteracy in that sense. You could be using it quote unquote correctly, but again, right, it's now a different degree of how much you actually, for example, are trusting the output or using the output. So that I think is going to be that critical part. So, but then again, in a lot of ways, like, look, I mean, anything new tech, that's a thing, right? Like, when the internet was new, we also had to all learn and to be able to discern is like, look, what content or facts or whatever it is that you could trust online. And frankly, that's still something that we struggle with today, even without AI, right? And I think it really just sort of amplifies and accelerates a lot of this, potential disinformation. And I think it's just like, look, it will really have to drive some strong conversations, even not so much so from a corporate setting. I mean, us with our children, with our kids, with our family, on how we actually now make sure that our families, as this new technology really becomes a little bit more ingrained in our day-to-day life, that I think we really have to be able to sharpen critical thinking. Us with us as
we've
humans,
got to get
right?
back critical thinking.
Yeah, correct.
So, in fact, I agree with you. And in fact, coming back to your question, Abed, currently it's going to get worse because now we've got Claude, we've got Open Claude, we've got Mythos. It's doing things that forget ChatGPT and Copilot. Now we're going totally untraveled, unmarked territory. It's like, so now we have, like Open Claw, you give it permission to this, and you lose control. I mean, there was this case of Open Claw where it started spamming all your contacts. So imagine you're out on the beach, you're out on the beach in Cebu with a pina colada in your hand because Open Claw's doing all your work, answering your emails, booking your airline tickets, doing your reports, and then sends a rude note to your boss. And when you go back to the office, you find that your things are in a box in the corner and you're out of a job, and you didn't even know why.
Right. Wow. The discussion was very, very intense. So there you go. That's and it's only top 5. Imagine we were to extend that. So the top 5 things you need to know before AI breaks your business.
Part 2, okay?
I hope so. That's good. That's a good problem to have. So if any of those 5 made you nervous, that's good because that means you're listening. I got a comment here from Ernie Imperial, another IT professional.
Ernie,
Ernie,
nice
right?
to see you. Yes, of course, boss. Good evening.
Ernie. According to Ernie, I would think that AI turns everyone into a product owner. Makes sense, right? Right.
Ernie's one of the most intelligent people I know, so I'm just going to say.
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Should get him on the call.
Yeah, I should.
Ernie, join us now. Like, we have to.
So another part or extending that is some sort of like a reality check, and we get into actually what's happening out there, the ground truth, what CISOs and teams are seeing, what's breaking and what's surprising everyone. The next segment is even going to be more intense, kinda, but it's going to be hard hitting questions for both of you. I'm going to start with Anton. Anton, you said you cannot do AI if you don't do cyber. But most companies today are doing AI without cyber. What's the real world consequence of this disconnect?
Well, I think at least how I've seen it is that there was just sort of kind of like a Rubicon that was crossed. Like at first, like sort of like the example that I gave, right? Like, when the ChatGPT moment happened, I think companies that did not yet feel potentially confident, also with this security, is like, look, they almost kind of like, hey, you know what, we don't want to yet, right? There was a lot of slow drive to adoption. They were a little bit hesitant. Some intelligently so, I would say, is like, look, hey, we probably got to be able to look at back a bit of our hygiene, and are we actually ready for it? I think the problem is that where the industry crossed is that, like, look, at some point, look, it's in everything. You sort of talked about it a bit earlier, right? And it's like, it's my daily job, and sometimes, like, God, I'm also kind of like too intense by it because everything is now AI. Everything is automation. Everything is AI. AI washing is happening, and every boardroom conversation there's AI. And I think the pressure now on CAIOs, like, I think maybe let's say a year ago, I do believe, since I'm holding all those roles, I think the CISO job is one of the most difficult jobs in the world. I would argue.
Oh, hell yeah.
The CAIO job, I think, is the most difficult job now in the world.
Oh, you just Google CISO burnout, you get lots of articles.
But I think the CAIO job now is more difficult. Again, and related to that, I think the burnout is going to happen fast just because the pressure now, to answer your question, is like, it's too much. And it's
No, but you
almost like,
see,
look, the
let me
risk
jump in here.
appetite.
The CAIO job, that one is in nascent, so it's like it's kind of exotic and esoteric. And number two is that the CAIO job is like the CIO or CTO job. You build things, you don't stop things, unlike the CISO. So people love you more than they love the CISO.
Like I said, I would just argue differently, just because, like I say, even talking with other CIOs, CTOs, or CAIOs, it's like, look, right, the risk appetite of the board for AI is massively disproportionate to any other technology in the past, right? That's why, again, it goes back now to your question, Appet. It's like, well, why is it all of a sudden companies now, even if they're not confident with their security, it's like, hey, you know what, YOLO, just adopt, just drive it, because that's coming top down. That's actually coming top down. That the risk appetite is so massive that boards are just like, you know what, we don't care, just drive adoption already. We got to be able to get value immediately. And that, I think that's why I do think that there is almost kind of like a shift in the challenge. And although I do say that in jest, there's so much pressure now to be able to realize value and ROI and
let
get
me jump
impact.
in here.
So.
I've got an answer to your question. Why is that suddenly there's a lot of adoption even from board level? It's because it's seen as a new money. It's a marketing and sales money generator.
Yes.
I give you an example.
I've
been security a long time, so bear with me. I like to tell people this joke. I still tell this joke. Assuming you have a car and your car has an accident or an engine damage and you need to repair, you cannot not repair the car. It's $2,000 and you're cursing like the world is ending. Shit, I really hate this. But in the same guy, the same car, the same $2,000, you put sports rims. You're so happy. Nobody asks you to put a sports rim. Say, hey, bro, look at my car. It's so cool. The sports rims is like AI adoption. It's an outward look. It's a marketing sales thing. Repairing the car is a cost. CISO is the cost. Cyber is a cost. AI it puts you up there on a city
investment.
Right. Yes, this is how it sees. And like you said, Anton, to your point, they forget the dangers in the issue.
Hey, Tony, that reminds me. There's a Singaporean term for that. It's called kiasu.
Yes, kiasu.
Afraid to lose.
Yes.
Afraid to lose, right?
Basically, what is it? Is it YOLO or is it FOMO? FOMO. It's FOMO. Yeah. So you're doing AI. I've got to do AI too. I cannot be behind. Things like that. So that's the thing. See, AI is seen as, and that's why the adoption from the top is go for it. I mean, I give another bad example. Okay, many years ago, and this actually happened. I was at IBM, and there was a bank that was going to give a $100,000 PO for some security stuff. But at that point in time, the iPad had just come up, so it's a new sexy thing. You a piece of glass. They postponed the $100,000 security order because they wanted to spend the $100,000 to buy iPads for their sales and marketing stuff. But the firewall can come next quarter. This quarter, I'm taking the money to buy iPads. Okay, so you see the point.
Yep. Well, Anthony, there's no firewall now. It's going to be zero trust, right? So everything's going to be in the cloud. So.
Anyway.
All right. Again, very, very intense discussion. You are absolutely right. I think this definitely needs to go have a part 2 because I hardly even went to half of my questions. So I would need to skirt some of those. But I have one question for Anthony. You said AI governance must start with education, not regulation. But AI is evolving faster than any policy cycle. Do you think we're already too late?
No, we cannot take the too late, because it's too late, we give up, we die. If you have a half-baked policy, it's better than a zero-baked policy.
True.
And see, Anton's agreeing because he's in the middle of it. He's in the hot seat. So the point is, yes, basically, how do you do AI governance? I mean, first of all, the thing is this, the problem with the word governance is that the shortcut is stop this, disallow that, block this. You see what I mean? So do we want to do that? And, how do we draw the balance between democratizing and stop this, stop that until we get a better idea?
You should read Anton's kitchen analogy. That's our roadmap for everybody.
No, but to lean in on that, right? Right. If we zoom out, looking at it geopolitically, right? Is like, look, I think that's where EU is disadvantaged, just because not just with AI, but any technology outright, right? Is like, look, EU first thing that they want to do is to regulate.
Yes,
Regulated.
they started this whole privacy thing 20 years ago.
Correct.
Yeah,
Regulate
yeah.
first. Well, while unlike,
Yeah.
for example, the US is drive it through innovation. I think, for example, if we now look at it, I think from an APAC or Southeast Asia perspective, I think it's a serious conversation for us to be able to have. Is like, look, if we want to be able to really come out, I do think exactly, Tony, what you mentioned, right? We got to be able to balance. I don't think we can over-regulate. But I don't think we can also just irresponsibly drive reckless innovation. But we got to be able to drive that balance. So
Correct. I mean, in fact, interesting you said this. A couple of days ago, another meeting, I heard somebody say this: the US innovates, China develops, and the Europeans regulate.
correct, exactly. Yeah.
Okie dokie. Very, very intense discussion and very, very well expressed points, actually. I'm really, really glad to have you two. So we have to move along, unfortunately. And I have to skip a lot of segments. But this segment I really, really love. It's called When Everything Goes Sideways. Okay. So this is our story time segment, or what we internally call the when the shit hits the fan situation moment. The chaos, funny disasters, the you won't believe this happened stories from the trenches. So let's start with Anthony. What's one AI moment that went hilariously or catastrophically wrong?
Well, apart from the newspaper one, is like I say, where someone, a young business guy in the office gets AI to help him build a document which he presents to his boss, who skimmed through it, presented it to his boss, and went to the company president or went to the minister of the country, who with a sharp eye found that it's not, and by then he had gone to the press.
That was definitely catastrophic.
Yes.
Anton, what broke, and if it did break, what learnings that you've gotten from it?
I mean, it's probably not going to be a funny story per se, but almost kind of like just a really almost professional anecdote. I think it's just more of like, look, a lot of these things, like I said, right? With me, let's say with my CAIO role, I mean, there's no friggin' playbook for it, right?
True.
Everything is really kind of like
there's no cookie cutter.
Yeah. You figure it out along the way. And like, look, to be perfectly honest, let's say over the past 2 years with me, leading this thing, let's say for Globe, is like I would argue I've probably made more mistakes than I've drove successes, right? But I think that's just kind of like part of the day-to-day work, is right. Like we got to just be able to keep on adjusting. Like, look, certainly, like for example, let's say the conversation around POC graveyards. Well, shit. We did have a lot of POC graveyards, but I think it's just about the resiliency and how do you now, for example, keep on adjusting, and just how do you make sure that you keep on learning from it and to be able to really evolve and shift your strategy to be able to adopt to it, because I think that's a challenge, but at the same time, exciting part about it, right? It's like, again, it's not yet figured out. Everything is so new, and I think it's such a great opportunity for all of us practitioners from a technology perspective that, like I said, I'm lucky enough that at the start of the birth of the internet, I was lucky to catch that wave, right? When I was young. In a lot of ways now, for example, if we really do truly argue that, let's say AI is kind of like, that new wave or the industrial revolution or whatever it is, I think we're all lucky to be at that wave. And I think us being able to catch that, and again, the same curiosity that we all had together as cyber practitioners when all of these things were starting, I think if we can still apply it there's still a lot of things that we can explore and build together, and I think it's still somewhat exciting in that sense. I know it's sort of kind of like off tangent from like, what broke, whatever, but things are going to break. Like when we started as young hackers or whatever, I think a lot of us started on the other side of the fence. In fact, that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to break things. So I think it's actually fun now that we're also breaking things, because I think it is now part of that same ambitious discovery and curiosity that also drove all of us to where we are now.
But you see, Anton, a couple of things to your point. Number one, because it's early stage, you can afford to break things and make mistakes.
Yep.
And number two, as you go along, as you break things, you're building that playbook that wasn't there.
Yep.
Correct.
Greenfield. So
Greenfield,
man up
Blue Ocean,
and soldier on.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to skip a lot of things, but there are some questions here. Number one, the first question is: are companies adopting AI faster than they can secure it? Anton.
Generally speaking, yes, right. Like I said, and even us, I would argue, like, look, I think we're ahead of the pack. But like I said, right, I think that delta is starting to keep on increasing. It's just moving way too fast, right? At some point, you almost kind of like probably have to slow it down to be able to catch up. I don't know, but short answer is yes.
All right.
I'll
Anthony.
add to that. And
Yep.
the reason the answer is a short answer is yes, because it's not that it's faster than we can secure it. The whole conversation tonight is people are not even thinking about it. Do they
That's
even have
true.
an AI policy in place? Do they even have an
Uh,
that's the thing, a security policy in it? Are they even aware? And that's the issue. It's not that they're playing catch up. It's that they didn't even start in the first place. You know, at the starting point, bam, you know, the AI runs and the guy is still tying his shoelace at the front block.
Well, not that you told them, Anthony, they're going to spring up their AI and create AI policy. So tomorrow
Yes,
they'll
the
have an
first thing
AI
you do
policy.
is everybody out there, the first thing you do when you have is Google AI cybersecurity policy or ChatGPT. Write me an AI cybersecurity policy, and that's a start.
It's probably going to be good too, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, that's true.
Because you didn't
That's
have
very
one
true.
before.
That's true. That's true. And this one is very interesting. What's the biggest lie vendors tell about AI security? You know, we can choose not to name them, but just Tony, would you like to take first crack at it?
I'll take the first cut at this. I'll answer your question differently because it's in the same spirit. Okay, I think we're out of time. Okay, and then I actually teach this in my classes in university. You know, I'm somebody who makes and after this call, everyone's going to hate me, but I actually made a point in a public forum. You know, in cloud computing, there's a shared responsibility model.
Yep.
Which is a fallacy. Why I tell people why is it a fallacy? Because in a shared response, the same with AI, the vendor gives you a shared responsibility model. What's the problem? The problem is that in a shared responsibility model, when times are good, we are brother, we are paring. When things go wrong, there's a data leak. There's hey, I don't know. You read the fine print. You know.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
How about you, Anton?
No, I think just to me, it's like, there again, right? Tony mentioned it earlier. Like, look, everybody is now putting AI on a label to be able to drive stock price, right? But so I think it's just really more of like a heads up to the CISOs. And again, we talked about critical thinking. Not everything now, like, there's so many startups. Every company now has an AI product. You got to be able to really make sure that it's been mentioned, review your policy, review what your AI strategy is, make sure there's a right fit, because right now there's so many products out there and everything is AI. You got to be a little bit more discerning, because I would say frankly, 9 out of 10 of them are probably not even, it's a repackaged DSPM. It's a shadow SaaS product, but now it's also shadow AI. Like it's lipstick on a pig.
It's a wrapper of somebody else's shadow AI.
Correct. Yeah. So lipstick on a pig, like what they say.
Okay.
Right? So.
Like you say, we should ask them, what does your AI do? And then what's the vendor?
All right. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time left. So how we end things here is that there's what we call the Tuesday tool. So the Tuesday tool is a takeaway segment, a mindset, a trick, or a small practice the audience can steal and use immediately. Go ahead, Anton. Your Tuesday tool.
Goodness gracious. When I drive to the office, there's no radio. I don't listen to music. I think quiet time is going to give you a lot of great value in terms of really thinking. And again, going back in this new hyper AI world, I do think that being able to quiet down things, really think, internalize, I think is going to be gold. So maybe try that. Driving to work, don't listen to anything. Keep it quiet. Just start thinking quietly.
Good.
Funny thing, I've got the same thing. And of course, I add the grace of God on top. But yeah, I got very largely the same thing.
So stillness and take a break from all the noise.
Once you park the car, get in the office, the chaos starts to happen, and all hell breaks loose. You don't even have time to breathe. You can't find a quiet spot until in the evening when you're finally driving home.
That's why we all have Monday anxiety attacks, right?
Yes. So even on the Tuesday.
Okie dokie. With that, we're
one
going
other thing,
to
Abed, yes.
yeah.
I think when we end this meeting, the first thing we all should do is you change your name to AIBET, Anton go AINTON, and I do AI Anthony.
Antoine. Guys, thank you so much. This has been really a very, to say the least, interesting. It's really hard on with all these the questions that we came up, the questions with the audience had come up. Thank you very much so much. I owe you guys dinner. We'll time it when Tony comes back in the Philippines.
Or you guys
I'm
come
sure.
down. Well,
Or when we go to Singapore, right?
Yes, Sir Paring Abed and Sir Antoine. It was wonderful working with you guys. I learned a lot too. Okay, it's not just spewing, but I learned a lot too.
Thank you. Anton, thank you. Thanks a lot, man.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Jody.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Selamat po.
Thank you.
Okay, and God bless everybody and your AI journey.
So before we call it a night, a very big shout out goes to my previous guests in episode 1, Stefan of ADB, Roland of PNB, Paula of Security Bank, and Jed of AUB. The first will always be the hardest. I've learned a lot of lessons, and because of your support and encouragement, behold, we now have episode 2. So this has been season 1, episode 2, the AI security lowdown, unfiltered, unscripted, and human, as you can tell by the laughter and other banters that we have tonight. Thank you to our guests, Anton and Anthony, and thank you everyone for watching. If you learned something tonight, share it. If you do not, blame the AI. See you next episode, same time, same chaos, and same Martes. And as always, stay curious, stay human, and keep your wisdom evolving. Magandang gabi po sa lahat. Good night, and bye-bye.